Who are you? Beneath the expectations, the labels, and the societal conditioning, what does it truly mean to become you? I'm John Fleming, the founder and lead practitioner of Becoming You. I created Becoming You out of a desire to share my own experience of becoming myself and to support others who are curious about who they are. From a young age, I have been driven by a desire to figure out who I am, why I'm here, and how I can belong while being myself. This is Becoming You, the podcast. Conversations about uncovering, embracing, and being your true self. A place where I dive deep into what it means and what is required to live life as your most authentic self. Through real, honest, and grounded conversations with professionals and people who are walking the path. If you're curious about identity, authenticity, and personal freedom, your own or others, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Rosemary, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here. Why don't you say a few words to introduce yourself?
Okay, my name's Rosemary Napper, and right now I'm looking out on this wonderful view of the sea on a very calm day. And all I can see is a big horizon. And it gives me hope because the world right now is a bit going to hell in a handcart. And there is nothing like the sea, the ever-changing sea, which sometimes is also going to hell, to see that change is possible.
What a nice sentiment. So I have a question from our last guest to get us started.
Great.
So the question is, too often good intentions get confused with good practice. What steps do you take to address, deconstruct, and mitigate this in your work?
I think as a practitioner, that strikes me in several ways. So, first thing, and I'm a transactional analyst, and one of the things that the founder, Eric Burns, said is whenever you see somebody, let go of all your previous meetings, let go of all your thinking, let go of all your intentions. Just be open to this moment, the here and now, the impact this person has on you right now. So there's there in the basic instructions, really, of just let go of good intentions. I totally agree. Good intentions are not enough. Good intentions pave the road to hell. So there is something about good intentions which are really about rescuing in some way. And that's one of the things that I really look out for in my practice. I'm collaborating, I'm working with the client or clients. I'm not in any way taking them to a particular place of my whatever. I'm not in any way looking after them. So to be really careful of that desire to somehow rescue somebody. And the third bit is in TA, we do contracting. And contracting is an ongoing process, not just something you do at the beginning. So contracting is about finding out what people want. And it's about what they want. And it's about checking with them whether we're en route to whatever they want, not whether we're on the path that I want to take somebody on, but are we going wherever they want to go? And it's about teasing through with them, is where they want to go possible, feasible, realistic? Does it need to be broken down into smaller steps? So lots of different ways of checking out whose intentions and being very wary of my own.
I like that idea as an element of one's own personal reflection as part of your professional practice, about what do I need to be wary about in my own intentions.
Absolutely. And we can say, I want the best for my client. But actually, let's get really clear. What does that mean? I want my client to sort out what might be for them the best. And I might not agree, but that's not my role to say, no, come here instead. I might voice my disagreement and where they come from to help the client get really clear what they really want.
There's many branches and places that I could go with that, but I'm going to resist that temptation right now. And curious to ask you about becoming, seeing as this is the Becoming You podcast, and to give an invitation for you to share some of who you've been becoming in your life.
I think, not to put too fine a point in it, I've been becoming an old hag, as the old English phraseology goes. And there is something about becoming older, which is for everybody every day, which is very liberating. And I really like to hold on to that and sometimes talk to it, because I think it really provides some sort of hope for people. We change, we go on changing. We do go on and on and on changing and becoming easier with ourselves, wiser about the world, more diplomatic sometimes, and absolutely not diplomatic sometimes with others. All of that, we're all freed up to be who we are.
What is it specifically about being an old hag that you resonate with?
There is something, and this could sound so patronizing, it's not intended to be, about, seen it before, heard it before, not in the unique way you express it. I might have heard it before, called other things or expressed in other ways, but the world carries on going round. And so far I carry on going around with it. It's something about that. It's like, okay, I guess I'm increasingly unshockable. That's part of it. And I have got wiser with time. It's called practice, isn't it? It's like, okay, still room to go.
And do you correlate that with aging?
I think so. I mean, I notice with people of my sort of age, they've gone in one of two ways. They're either they've gone the way I've gone, lively in the pleasure of that, and thank God I am who I am now, rather than whatever in the past. Or they've turned into grumpy old men and grumpy old women who have gone the other way, shut down.
Do you feel like there's also a third option of people who are in quite a panic way resisting aging and putting lots of energy into trying to retrieve youthfulness?
Oh, so much so. Cosmetic surgery is having a boom, partly because of that. Absolutely. And they'll end up grumpy, won't they? Because once the plastic surgery is worn off and they get the after effects, which is saggy and baggy, even more so, then I think, okay.
That's such an interesting conversation for me, because I have grown up in a time in which cosmetic adjustment, whether it's piercings or body modification, tattooing, Botox injections, facelifts, have almost become like anybody could do them. Like there was a time when it was just for the stars, and now it's so accessible for so many people, not for everyone, obviously, but for many people, that it's a real confrontation for me of like, will I or won't I do that? Will I, inverted commas, grow old gracefully, or will I attempt to claw back how it used to be or how I used to look? And I think that's a real difficulty for people.
I really hear that, claw back how I used to look.
Yeah.
Because that's the past, isn't it?
Yeah.
You will have changed.
Yeah.
And you will go on change. And we can never be quite how we used to be. And nostalgia and memories and photos and videos and all of that, lovely. Enjoy. And you are who you are now. And why would you want to be the old person?
I find this a fascinating conversation because I know that conversations take place in society broadly about cosmetics and then that. And for me, the overlap between our becoming and our bodies and how we look is so strong. Like your body is part of your becoming. It grows, it changes shape, it changes. And I think in the personal development sphere, in one hand, there can be a lot of talk about authenticity on like maybe an emotional and psychological level. But then on a physical level, there's still can be a kind of a sense of, yeah, but you must try and retain youthfulness as much as possible because that's personal development. It gets cloaked in that way, so like go on the yoga retreat, work out 5 days a week intensively, eat this restrictive diet. This is all branded these days as part of personal development. And I think it's very confusing for people.
So I'm absolutely with you. Authenticity would include the body. The body keeps the score, as they say. And certainly keep fit. And fitness is correlated with age and aging, for sure. Diets I've never understood, ever. I've never, ever done any form of dieting. Food is so wonderful. Why would anybody do that? So to me, that seems really, really strange. But I think what I'm hearing in what you're saying is people contriving to be something different from who they really are.
Yeah.
And that seems to me to be part of the impact of the wider social cultural systems that we're in, particularly in the Western world. And that somehow we've got to strive to be something other than what we are, rather than getting clearer. And personal development seems to me to be about being much clearer about who am I in the light of all the systems I live within. Who am I? How do I be at ease in the world? With myself, with others. What else is there?
Well, there's a multi-million-dollar industry selling really good products to people who are, desperate maybe in some way or eager. So yeah, I think that it's difficult right now to be in the world and to hang on to what you're putting forward.
And you're talking there about strong capitalist values.
Yeah.
As opposed to values of kindness and respect and other things which are necessary for being in the world with other people.
Yeah, and being in the world with self, right? Because we need to respect ourselves and our bodies and like our bodies. Fascinating. I hadn't expected a conversation to go that direction, but very interesting. What we're really here to have a conversation about is script, which is a transactional analysis term. So maybe we'll start off, Rosemary, if you want to kind of give an overview of what script is from a TA perspective.
And it fits so well with the conversation that we've been having, because it's the story we tell ourselves about who am I, who are you, and what's it all about. And we may have many stories which come together, a bit like an anthology. So in all our different roles, maybe I have a different story in my work role, another story in my partner role, another story as a parent, and so on. And the idea that we form these stories from the beginnings of our lives, and we keep updating the stories, but nonetheless, the plot is probably fairly similar. And every now and again, we might have a radical redecision and take the story off in a different direction. and become much more conscious of our own authorship. So back to the authenticity. And we might really want to take the story somewhere else authentically. But it is this collection of stories that I've got for myself, which explain everything, pretty much everything. And those stories are there initially probably to protect us. In their time, they probably did. At the time of creating a particular story, a particular plot line, probably was protective. It helped us get our hungers fed, our literal hungers, but also our hungers for recognition, our hungers for stimulus, our hungers for a structure, for having a story which unfolds. It's got steps in it. So you can see how they came about. And our lives change, the world changes, and often the stories that we follow without thinking about it don't really serve us anymore. And there's the time to update the script, update the stories, to recognize that it's only a story. And if I don't like the story I'm in, let's create another story, different story.
For people coming to this way of thinking for the first time, how would one potentially go about uncovering their story or their script?
Is by working, first of all, with whatever they've come with, whatever's prompted them to come. There'll be a story. Something probably has happened, some precipitating incident, as the trade of counselling likes to call it, but something's happened. What happened? How come that happened? Who was involved? What was it like? How did you feel? How do you see it now? Those are all the same sorts of questions that somebody writing a film script would be asking, and somebody doing some counselling would also ask, is what's the story? And listening to the patterns in the story. There will be some patterns. There'll probably be some jumps because of this, then that, which may not stand up to logical investigation, but that's the story the person's telling themselves, because this happened, then that. And it's listening for those sorts of jumps as they tell you about other stories about their current lives. Maybe they want to tell you some stories about life in the past. Listening for patterns. And in particular, there's a number of patterns that I listen out for. Now, one of them is, what are the prohibitions buried deep in the story? The don'ts. Is it that your story is based around the premise that you can't be yourself? Back to the cosmetic surgery we were talking about earlier, that might well be something that's deeply buried in the stories. Don't be who you really are. Be who I want you to be. Be who society wants you to be. Be who others want you to be. So these deeply buried messages, there might be lots of others. Don't think for yourself. Think about others, but don't think for yourself. Repeating patterns. Or maybe don't feel, don't have emotions, or don't have a particular emotion. You can feel all the feelings, but don't feel joy. You're going to have a miserable time. That's who I am. That's my story. I'm going to be a miserable old git. That's probably where some of those grumpy old men and grumpy old women earlier come from. They're still running the story. So that's one of the ways of listening out, because what I'll be looking for then is, how can the person take permission for themselves to liberate themselves from that very constraining part which is buried in their stories.
And is it your philosophy that the resource or ability to break free from that restraint is already within the person?
Yes, I think so. There's a capacity that we all have to survive, which the stories have helped us to do, and we've outgrown them, to survive and to thrive. And part of that thriving capacity is our capacity for autonomy, to be outside the story. Those are the really good days, or the good moments, or the good hours when we are feeling liberated from a story, that part of ourselves, that muscle to just be, to enjoy, to be completely authentic. And that autonomous part of ourselves is very helpful in recognizing that the story is just a story. So for me, it's important in all my practice to help invite that autonomous part so that we can observe ourselves, observe, oh, there's a story I'm telling here, which may not be true. I've been telling myself that story for years, and it might not be the right story for me now. It doesn't serve me. And what do I really want? And to create new stories which are a bit more flexible. So stories can be very, very well read, frequently spoken. I keep telling somebody the same old story.
When I did my first TA training, one of the exercises at some point was to think of fairy tales or kids' stories. And if you were to think of all of them, which one story tells the story of your life?
I have a variation on it, which is what I really like to do. Just to start off with, okay, just jot down, and we're talking about a paragraph here. Okay, the best film you saw last year. Jot down the story of that film in the last year. Okay, go back a few years. What was the TV series or the novel or the movie that really got you then? And jot down the plot. And then go back a few more years. And you keep going back until you're a young adult. What was it then? What was your favorite story? And then when you were maybe an older teenager, a younger teenager, and then back to coming towards the end of primary school, beginning of primary school, go back a bit earlier, fairy story, TV, cartoon, whatever, back to maybe the first nursery rhyme, that just whatever comes to you is going to be right. You don't have to think about it too hard, to work intuitively. And then you've got 9 or 10 different stories. And you can look at them in a few ways. Firstly, you can look back and see, what are the patterns? Are there any implicit don'ts which come up again and again in the stories? Do you find in the stories they're all about persecuting, or they're all about rescuing, or what are they about? So just see if there's any patterns. But the other way is to look at those stories and think about, what are the resources, the little nuggets of gold in the stories that could be available to you. So it might be having a capacity to be creative, or it might be there's water in all of the stories. That's a resource. That's something that's important to you. How can you harness? What is it about that? What does it mean to you? And then how can you harness that?
For me, you're highlighting something important that I feel like probably needs to be named around the personal development sphere more broadly, which is that in 2025, we're probably in a reality, or at least it's my perspective, we're in a reality that personal development in its many forms has become very transactional and very commodified. So a bit like you go to the pharmacy and you've got a wart and you need a cream and you say, hey, I have this problem. Can I have a cream? You buy it, you use it, job done, it's gone. That has in some way really got projected onto all forms of personal development, which is, I have a thing, I'm paying you money, get on with it and sort it out for me. So that's the first thing, the dynamic. And the second thing is, yeah, I have a thing and it's a problem and I want to get rid of the problem.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a problem, because then all the focus is on what you don't want, what's not working, what you don't like, why you're unhappy, why you don't feel fulfilled, why you don't like yourself. I don't want to dismiss that. I understand that people really feel like that. There's been points in my life where I've really felt that and felt disillusioned. So it's not to dismiss that, but it's to say, if we focus solely on that, then moving to the health and resource becomes prohibitive in itself, because we're facing the wrong direction completely. There needs to be a capacity and somebody to be able to turn around and say, I'm willing to look at the resource, which is, I think, is what you're highlighting there in that exercise. You always have a choice. You can go looking for the patterns and the problems.
Yeah.
And you could also go looking for the opportunities, the resources, and the help.
Yeah. And it's really important to look at what is working and build on what is working in your life at the moment. Because whatever is working, and I'll use a parallel with keeping physically fit, whatever is working well, you can strengthen the muscle and you can become more capable of bringing that part in. So building on the strengths you've got, really, really important in order to be able to then deal with those patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And we know we're dealing with patterns, dealing with habits, because patterns are habits, then it takes time to shift a habit.
Yes.
And you must replace one habit with another. You can't just stop, as people who've tried to stop smoking or vaping find, as they then want to eat or have chocolate, do something else. So it's replacing the habit with another habit, which is much, much healthier in the sense of your well-being, and having a balanced idea about well-being. I mean, as you said earlier, it's not about the gym and physically keeping fit. There's an element of keeping healthily fit, and there are other things too. So I totally agree with you about commodification of the wellness world, because it loses sight of the individual. It mass markets to the individual, and that individualization is so key to the whole process of well-being. Your uniqueness, your individuality, your your unique circumstances, all of that's so important.
Yeah, and to focus on the health or the resource and to build those new habits, like you were saying, often, in my experience, requires somebody else to be part of that journey. To be able to do that for oneself on your own without any form of support is very challenging.
It is. It's like looking in the mirror. If you look in the mirror on your own, you probably have been trained by society to just look and see the defects.
Yes.
So I think it's really important to have somebody else to point out the bits that are working, to dialogue with you about them. And you have to be careful who you choose to do that with, so that you are working with somebody who's not going on a hunt for what's wrong, nor to get rid of that phrase that you used earlier, to get rid of whatever. It's almost impossible, because We can't get rid of an experience we've had. What we can do is take a different perspective on an experience we've had and see it differently. We can weigh it up. We can't get rid of it. We had that experience, but we can get a new way of seeing, a new way of thinking, a new way of listening to ourselves. And that's the bit that's important. There's that saying in TA from a book that was written, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. It's not about changing the childhood. You can't. And as a practitioner, I never promise that I can magic wand, pay me so much, and this will be transformed. I can't promise that. What I can do is accompany somebody, and that's what you're paying me for. Accompanying you on an exploration and to go to a place to help perhaps you find a place where you can get a fresh perspective on the reality of your experiences. And then you'll hold them different, and you'll hold hope differently.
I feel like we're doing a full circle moment because we started off with the horizon and a sense of hope, which feels a nice way to bring this to a close, because I guess they're a bit like what you were saying at the start. Hope could be there, but you have to look for it. And you looked out your window earlier and you saw it because you were looking for it.
Absolutely. Still there.
Lovely.
Looking different from when we started though. Not misty.
Rosemary, do you have a question for our next guest?
I do. So the question is about the person of the practitioner. So biases, privileges, ignorance, and so on can cause untold and unseen harm. So what steps do they take to address this and mitigate and maybe even deconstruct in their work?
That's a meaty question to get into, because the reality is we all have biases and prejudices. It's part of being human.
Indeed, we do. I totally agree. We do. And therefore, what do we do about them? Because we have them.
Yeah.
A bit like the warts or the past experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't get a cream for your biases and prejudices.
I'm not sure you can get a cream for warts either. The last.
Maybe not, no. Oh, thanks, Rosemary.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening. I'm curious about what this conversation has stimulated for you. Thoughts, feelings, curiosity. If this episode intrigued you, hit follow to be notified about new episodes. I know these conversations are valuable to me, and if you think they're valuable too, please do leave a review. Leaving a review allows more people to discover the podcast. You can scroll down to ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and click write a review. You can also connect with Becoming You on Instagram and TikTok by searching the handle at becoming_you__. The links are in the show notes too. You can also visit www.becomingyou.ie to explore the idea of becoming yourself. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.